Welcome to The Writer's Dream. This is a show that's a forum for authors to talk about how they wrote their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. We have local authors, mostly Long Islanders, who come on the show. They talk about their books in all genre. We have mystery writers, children's writers, we have people who write nonfiction books. You name it, we have it. Romance, wonderful books. And it's all local talent. You can find us on YouTube under Writer's Dream, believe it or not. We have a Facebook page called The Writer's Dream. And if you're interested in being on the show or making a comment, go on the Facebook page for The Writer's Dream and make your comment or make your request, and I will get an email, and I will get back to you. Today's guest is Holly Patrone. Hi, Holly.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Holly is one of the funniest people I have ever met in person. When I read her biography, I really had to laugh because she describes herself as a person growing up on Long Island in a very loud Italian family,
Oh, yes.
where she developed the skill of speaking and waving one hand and with the other hand balancing a piece of Italian bread with antipasto on it without dropping it. And when I read that, I was Italian for 18 years. I was married into an Italian family for 18 years, and I miss my Italian family very much. And this is what it was like. And Holly has written a book based on her Long Island background, which we'll probably get to talk about Long Islanders too. And it's called Death is a Relative Thing. So Holly, tell us about Death is a Relative Thing.
Well, Death is a Relative Thing is a book about a woman named April Sorreo. And on her 40th birthday, she was having birthday sex and accidentally killed her husband. Now, that may or may not be so funny, but it's actually pretty funny. And
Not for him.
Not for him, not at all. But now we're talking 6 years later is where we come into the book. And she's having a really hard time finding a date because any man that is even remotely interested finds out who she is and then runs in the other direction.
Why?
I don't know. She's raising her 3 teenage sons, and her mother is a very, well, a very Italian Sicilian guilt trip oriented woman. So she asks April to go to see a psychic with her, and she does, and lo and behold, her ex-husband comes through. And on the same day that she finds out her ex-husband is coming through happens to be the day that she's having her first date in 6 years. So now you've got the classic triangle. You've got April, you've got the husband who's coming through, and you've got the new boyfriend. And it's just a lot of fun. It's, you know, he needs a little bit of help from heaven. It seems that Sal, her husband, can't seem to conform to heavenly rules, and he needs her help. And meanwhile, she's trying to start this new relationship. So between, you know, the mother, between the kids, and between, you know, the two loves in her life, it's a lot of fun.
What motivated you to write this book?
It didn't start out as a book. My daughter's godfather, actually, was named Sal, and he passed away at a very young age. Very, very funny man, and we used to have such a good time with him. And I had started just writing something kind of to commemorate him. And that's how it started. Now, it kind of morphed into something very different than that after some time. He kind of became a mixture of Sal, this crazy person, and my husband kind of all rolled into one. But that is how it started. And it eventually just grew into having a life of its own.
A lot of authors talk about books starting that way. You know, it's a little memoir here, a little something there, maybe a short story, and then you see the possibilities. I think it's falling in love with the characters. Once, I know that's how I started. I started writing these little case study stories for my kids in my forensic science class, and when I put characters in them, I was finished, you know. Then I had to find out what the characters were going to do.
That's right.
You know, and it's funny because it isn't really, I think this is really strange about when you create characters. You think you have control of them? Not so. They seem to be able to take off on their own. Where did you get your characters from? I understand where you know, one of them comes from, but...
Well, again, I think you're exactly right in what you're saying. I think especially a first book has a lot more of the author in it than you might think. You know, they always say, write what you know. Well, what I know is a big Italian family, so what comes through is a big Italian family. And I have to say, there's an awful lot of people in that book, but, you know, never taken, you know, one-on-one. You know, it's a little bit of, I have 5 children. My oldest is 32, my youngest is, wow, turning 12. Okay, and most of them are boys, and my boys are really rolled into all of the characters of April's 3 sons. You know, my husband, I already said, you know, there's bits and pieces of him in there. So as I was writing, you know, certain things would come out that were very part of, you know, very much a part of my life, but not related as a story, not, you know, related as a memoir, you know, so I kind of like built some of that in there, I think, because there's a comfort level with that. You know, when you're writing your first book. The second book, Relative Identity, which is the sequel to the first one, is also, you know, the same characters, but it kind of moves away from that a little bit, and I can see myself growing as a writer. And, you know, the third book, because I am working on a third in the series, it moves even further.
girl.
Yeah, thank you. It moves even further away from that. You know, I'd like to see that the characters are growing and they're moving, and you're right, they take on a life of their own. So in a lot of respects, there are people who know me personally who've read the book and gone, I see that, I know that, I remember when the kids, you know, did that, but, you know.
They always put me on the spot with my books, and they ask me if my main character, who's a teenage detective, a Nancy Drew type, and they say, is that you? And I said, that was a teenager I would have liked to have been.
Well, I can tell you that my mother tells all of her friends she is not the mother in that book.
I'm
Now, I beg to
sure.
differ.
Yeah, I know. But she is very, people who haven't had much experience with Italian families should watch Moonstruck.
Oh,
Because
I love that movie.
Moonstruck, to me, when I saw that movie, I cried and laughed at the same
Yes,
time.
absolutely.
Because it's so crystallized what an Italian family is like. That the lady in the airport who is cursing. The Cher character is watching her intended, her fiance, leave for Italy to visit his sick mother, dying mother.
Still,
Yes,
again.
yes, yet again. And the little old lady is standing next to her, and she's cursing the plane, and Cher says, my fiance is on the plane, and she said, I don't believe in curses. She is finished, you know. And I just thought, oh my God, it's like, and you could point to one of your Italian relatives that was exactly like that.
Absolutely.
And
Without a doubt.
it's just so much fun. Now, do you do anything else in comedy? Because you're just really a natural.
No.
You're a naturally funny person.
You think so?
Yes.
I don't know. There are days I don't feel so funny. Ask my daughter. She doesn't think I'm funny some days.
Well, our children never think of us as anything but the mommy who doesn't produce exactly what they want.
Exactly. But, you know, no, not really. I do. I write, but that's, I mean, I'm actually kind of an introverted person. People don't believe that about me. I'm not an extrovert. I am not necessarily shy, okay, but I'm an introverted person, which means that, you know, I'm not inclined to.
There's a private Holly.
Yeah.
And there's a public Holly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
So what happens in Relative Identity?
Ooh.
Just, you know, without giving the plot away.
Absolutely. First of all, the book is standalone to read, so it's not like you have to read the first book to read
You
the
have
second.
to do that.
Yeah, you do. And you know, I want somebody to pick it up and be comfortable with it. It becomes more of a mystery than the first one is, and basically Sal comes back because his identity, even though he's dead, his identity's been stolen, and now it's causing problems for April. So now they have to figure out who stole the dead guy's identity. And as
it's
Sal says, you know, who would really want to be me? I mean, you know, I'm dead, I have no credit, I have 3 kids, you know.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So it almost becomes like a mystery.
Right. And the third book that I'm writing is going to be more of a mystery. I'm building that into being more of a, you know,
Oh, that's
a
great.
solid mystery.
Yeah, that's great. So how long did it take you to write the second book? I know the first one was probably a work in progress over years.
Yes.
How about the second book?
About 1.5 years. And I have to tell you,
That's
this
pretty
is,
good.
You think so?
Yeah.
Because to me, I feel like I write so slowly. It's horrible. And one of the things I'm doing, and I don't know if, I think this is interesting, I'm going to be doing NaNoWriMo this year. And
gonna do what?
NaNoWriMo,
Okay.
which is the National Novel Writing Month. So for the month of November, it's just a challenge to oneself, really, where you write a novel within a month. And I have the first portion of the new book written, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do 50,000 more words to that within that month.
Wow.
Because
That's a
I am
challenge.
slow. I mean, I sit there, I have to get it perfect. It's like this OCD, anal retentive thing that I've got going. And if I don't get it exactly down on paper, exactly how I want it, I can't move on. So it frustrates me that I can't just get my ideas and trust myself that I can go back and edit and make it more what I want it to be. So I'd like to see if I can become a little bit more fluid with my writing. And I think this is a way for me to test the waters and see if that's something that I can accomplish.
That's interesting because I think writers all have their own styles. Now, you write at the computer.
Yes.
See, I can't write at the computer. Nothing comes to me if I sit in front of that screen.
Really?
Yes.
So you write longhand?
I have these yellow pads, and
Really?
I carry them around with me, and my best writing is done on airplanes, trains. I'll take the car and just drive down to the beach and sit in the parking lot. I have to get away from the computer and the house, and because you talk about being slow, there's just too many distractions. When I'm home, and I don't even have kids living at home. I have 2 cats. I mean, that's it. And I find that being home is very distracting. The phone rings or something says, dust me, clean me.
That's the problem.
And so I have to get out and I have to do the yellow pad. And I don't care. I scribble. I mean, I can't even have somebody type my manuscripts because it's all scribble. Only I can read this hieroglyphic. So then I come and then I do a fast type. I type and I'm not even thinking about what I do. Then I go back and I read it and then I rewrite. And so you're not, what I'm hearing is that you're really not into rewrite.
No, and actually I do go back and I rewrite and I rewrite and I edit. But I have this problem with it not being perfect the second I put it down on paper. And if it's not, I go back and I reread it and I rewrite it. And see, I think
can't do that.
I think that I would be better off if I could kind of let go of that.
Yes.
And so that's what I'm working on. And that's the whole point of me doing NaNoWriMo for this year. I don't think that NaNoWriMo, I mean, I'm sure some people could do it. I don't think it's going to put out an exceptional novel within a month's period. But I think that if I kind of learn to let go, you know, like I said, it's that whole OCD, whatever thing
you're
that I'm
trying-
going. I'm trying to let it go and see if I can become more productive and let it flow a little bit more easily.
But you're trying to grow as a writer is what you're
Absolutely.
trying to do. And
Yes.
when I write a book, I take a course. I take a writing course when I'm writing the book. Because I wasn't a trained writer. I didn't go to college to become be a writing major or a communications major. I was a science teacher, So when I wrote the first book, I decided I would do it through a course. And then I said, this is good because, first of all, I had a full-time job at that time. And not that I think that marketing these books is not a full-time job.
Which it is.
But I thought to myself, oh, there'll be assignments, and I'm OCD that way, being a teacher, and I'll have to do this on time, and it did. It kept me on task, and also I really did learn more about writing. In each book I can see there's growth as a writer, and the growth I see is actually what you were talking about, where you said that in the second book there was more depth to the characters, and that's what I find happening is you know the plot is there. The first time you write a book, the plot is like, you have to make it right. You have to make everything dovetail. And not that you ignore the characters, but the characters become more important, especially if you have a character that goes from
Through
book
a few
to
books.
book.
Well, yeah, and the thing that you don't want is for that character to get stale. And when you're being funny, the same gags over and over just don't work after a while. So you really have to think
The
of a
humor
way
has to change.
I'm sorry?
The humor has to change.
It does. It really does. And it has to grow along with the characters and moving away from certain things and, bringing in other things, so that it isn't, a cookie cutter type of a thing. I want to see some growth in the characters and in the
So what's the name of the third book?
Nah, I don't know yet.
Don't have it yet. It took me almost 2 years to come up with the name for my third book.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's probably going to wind up with something with relative or death. I mean, death is a relative thing, and then relative identity. I think I want to keep something,
Sure.
going so that it kind
No,
of
you have a good thing
feels like
going here.
it feels like a cohesive unit.
How did you publish?
Oh, okay, this is cool. I was sending out some of my writing to contests, and I had won an award overseas in the UK for a short story that I wrote, a very serious short story called Nadia back in 2009. And it kind of prompted me to continue writing and being more confident with sending some things out. And I got shortlisted on a couple of my stories and whatever else. But then I entered Death is a Relative thing into the Great American Novel Contest, sponsored by Tag Publishing. And I got a call, and they said, hey, you won first prize in the category, and we actually created an Editor's Choice Award for you. We liked it that much. And I said, wow, that's fabulous. Now, I'd only sent them the first 7,000 words, I think it was. And they said, well, could we see the rest of the novel? And I said, absolutely, as soon as I finished writing
wrote
it.
the rest.
I didn't have it written yet. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So
Talk
I
about
finished.
motivation.
I was close, but I wasn't there yet. So I did that. It probably took me another 2 months. And I sent it out to them, and then they called me up and they said, hey, we'd like to publish this. And I went, sounds like a plan. It is print on demand, which still, it's a tough sell. Print on demand just is.
Print on demand is easy. It's the marketing that happens after it
That's
so difficult.
it. The print on demand part is easy.
Would you like to read the review?
Oh.
I have a review there.
Okay. Okay.
She should change that first sentence, though. It's off-putting, but the review is so good.
It says, I was disappointed. Disappointed this book ended and there was no sequel for me. I had so much fun reading this book. When I started reading the book, I had no intention of really sitting down and reading at that moment, mostly because I was doing other things. However, once I began, I could not stop until I got to the end. The plot was interesting, funny, and snarky. I love that word, snarky.
Snarky, yeah.
I love this author's sense of humor. The characters were everyday people who were delightful to be around. I wanted to read more about April, her sons, her mother, and the two men in her life, one living and one dead. Holly Patrone has written a captivating and hilarious book. I found it highly entertaining and cannot wait for more from her.
Now, before we get on to the marketing piece, there's 2 excerpts from the book. I really would like people to get a flavor of your humor.
Wow, I have to read this much. You are a teacher, aren't you?
I am.
It's been a long time. Okay, and my eyes are not that great, but we'll give it a shot. My husband Sal died 6 years ago while engaged in sex, which, as an aside, was part of my 40th birthday present. The good news is that he was having sex with me. We both managed to finish the job before he checked out, and I didn't have to fight for custody of the kids. The bad news? Well, besides the fact that he was no help around the house, we got along really well and truly liked each other, which is more than you can say for most married people. It took a long time for me and the boys to work through this death, but we've done okay. Of course, people do talk, and word got around about how Sal met his unfortunate demise, so dating has been on the slow side. Actually, it's been non-existent. Men make sure they put physical distance between me and them, as if, wham, they'll have an orgasm right on the spot and keel over if they're within 5 feet of me. Yeah, well. You want me to read the other one, too?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, this is when she's at the restaurant. Okay. Our food came, which was a good thing because conversation is allowed to stop, or at least slow down to allow for chewing. I mean, who wants to be seen talking with a wad of flounder in her mouth? It gave me a few minutes to think. What was happening here? Why did I think I was hearing Sal? Again, I'm a little paranoid and a little more than neurotic, so I was beginning to worry that some of the more creative drugs I had taken in the 70s were doing some dance in my system and I was experiencing